and welcome to another edition of Trader Talk TV. Today we got Wes from BID in the office. Wes, thanks for coming in.
Hi, how you doing?
Good Wes, I'm very well. Today we're talking about mobile retargeting and getting the essentials from Wes here. But before we do that, let's talk about BID. Obviously you guys have gone through a bit of a rebrand recently. So where are you sitting now in the programmatic ecosystem?
Definitely programmatic, yeah. So we're a pure play mobile DSP. I think the things we focus on in that are fairly obvious. We're looking at the mobile revolution, and how much traffic as well as budget is shifting toward mobile. It's predicted to be a pretty massive swing over the next few years. Programmatic, of course, is basically underpinning everything we do. Mobile RTB has been the massive growth engine for us, and probably for the mobile ad industry in general over the last couple of years. And then we offer both a managed and a SaaS model, and that's really key to engage both agencies, direct customers, and trading desks, and everyone who's starting to look at the real opportunity behind this stuff.
Okay, so obviously retargeting was a huge driver of RTB adoption desktop, and it seems to be doing similar things in mobile. But today, Wes is going to talk about mobile retargeting, how it works, how it's different from desktop, and sort of the use cases that advertisers use with retargeting in mobile buying effectively.
What is it exactly?
Well, so how does mobile retargeting work on mobile devices, so something versus sort of desktop, which is all cookie based?
Yeah, I think the cookie is the place to start, because really the more you look at mobile, the more it looks very different from a typical desktop cookie environment. And that's because on iOS, for example, third-party cookies are turned off by default, both in the browser and in apps. And also in most app environments, you're getting different cookies per app than you do in the browser. So you don't have a common identity through cookies in the same way that you do in desktop to tie multiple sessions of the same user over time. And of course, people on a mobile device, what we see is primarily in-app activity. So maybe 80 to 90% of the activity that we see is actually in applications rather than using Safari or Chrome on Android. And all of that adds up to looking at different techniques to identify users. Across the two main platforms, then you've got iOS and Android, and they each have a device identifier. Apple calls it their identifier for advertising, and Android has more recently switched to an Android advertising ID. So these are identifiers that are built with some privacy concerns in mind by those manufacturers. You can actually opt out on the device from that being passed around.
So in terms of sort of how it works then, is it mostly in-app? So if we could draw it here, is it mostly in-app, or are we talking mobile web as well?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing to think about is if you think about a desktop environment, you typically, the same user is using the same browser over and over again. So they're engaging with lots of different sites, all within pretty much the same shell. So you've got one single cookie within that. And just visually, in an app environment on a phone, you're looking at apps 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and so on, all with their own cookies this way, right? So really what you've got to do is you've got to build a way to identify those environments. Not only that, you've then got the web versus app thing to bridge as well. So nice thing about the app environment is it does allow access to those device identifiers on both the Apple and the Google.
Via the UDID basically on both devices effectively, is it?
Yeah, so UDID has been now replaced by that IDFA on the Apple side. And because they've added in some opt-outs and other things around that for consumer privacy. And on Android, the same thing is that what was their Android device ID has been replaced by an advertising ID. That doesn't affect the browsers on those environments. So you've got Safari on your Apple device, and you've got Chrome on your Android device, for example,
or
and Windows,
Opera, or
IE,
Dolphin, or whatever.
Yep. And in each of those would again act as if it's a single app with the same environment, but you typically don't have access to those device environments. So really, we break it into two types of ways of recognizing users. One is device IDs, and the other is what we call device recognition. And the difference here is device IDs are 100% accurate. If you see the same user on this device through different apps, they'll have the same identifier.
Right.
Device recognition techniques rely on some less than 100% accurate techniques,
Like statistical IDs.
statistical information, to form a picture of the user that does change over time. So, if that device recognition technique is relying on, information about your time zone or something like that it can read from the browser environment, and you change that, that changes your identity.
Okay.
But in general, these techniques are pretty good at recognizing users for a period of, up to 28 days or so.
Okay. So, I mean, in terms of sort of the most reliable ID format, this would have to be it, the device ID.
The reliability is all
Right.
around the device IDs. But what you can do, and what we do at BID, is using what we call a precision audience engine, we're correlating these things. And between these two techniques, we're creating pictures of individual users within what we call a precision audience engine.
Right.
And each of those users might have a device ID, might have a device recognition ID, both attached. And that allows us to create a unique user model that can be applied, and then we start to get to the retargeting use cases that are
Yeah.
fun stuff.
So, in terms of sort of the budget at the minute, most of the budget seems to be going to the app world because of the reliability. This, obviously, you say, this is all depending on statistical IDs, etc., which is not 100% reliable, effectively. Is that why we're seeing a lot of more money going here than here?
I think it's actually down to user behavior as much as that. So again, the vast majority of the traffic we see through
Right.
exchanges tends to be on this side.
Yeah.
So it's there's still an open question over time how that will evolve in the marketplace.
Right.
But at the moment, it's hard to name a major publisher who hasn't embraced rolling out an app.
Yeah.
Because that's the way people are used to.
But when you talk about publisher, you're not talking specific. You're talking about utility app developers as well. We're talking about
anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Flashlight.
So let's not get too stuck
Twitter,
on The Guardian or something like
absolutely.
that, who has both an app and a mobile website, by the way.
Yeah.
But
So let's talk about use cases then. Obviously, e-commerce clients are huge early adopters of RTB, retargeting, and the likes of Criteo and Struck did really, really well out of the back of that. So in terms of sort of the mobile mobile devices, i.e. the handheld devices as opposed to the tablets, what are people using it for? What kind of advertisers are using retargeting? What are the use cases effectively for it?
Yeah, I think, just to start with where it's still evolving, I think the e-commerce thing is, or m-commerce on the mobile device, right? That, I don't think that's normal behavior yet. I think we're getting there, and I think there's some barriers to that.
The idea of buying via
the idea of actually making all your purchases that way,
which is still kind of
I think people are doing it to a limited degree on things like Amazon,
or eBay,
a few trusted retailers, but they're not using m-commerce in the same way that you would just search and buy things online yet. And I think that's down to bandwidth still has to come out,
trust factors,
trust factors, and simply the advertisers themselves need to make those experiences more mobile friendly.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, in the early days of mobile advertising, people tried to just translate those campaigns directly across, point people at their existing non-mobile website, and that's a disaster, right? No one's going to make it through the conversion funnel.
Yeah.
So that is a bit that I think is going to ramp up over time. You see some smart advertisers really trying to get that to work today, the likes of John Lewis and so on, with very mobile optimized experiences, reducing the number of clicks to purchase, making it so you can set up accounts and so on and so forth. And oftentimes actually embracing apps rather than websites to do it as well. So it remembers your identity.
Yeah, it's just more reliable. Yeah, of course.
And that's one use case for retargeting, and it's probably worth sketching out some of the ways that we see that happening today. If I take that down. So, I'd probably class that first one as m-commerce case.
Yeah.
And yeah, you've got an aspect of that going on today, but I think it's somewhat limited. What you have probably more of at the moment is two things. One is what I would call a kind of a brand response retargeting environment, and there's a lot going on behind this in terms of market activity today. So a lot of brands are actually embracing the very personalized experience of the mobile device to create rich media campaigns that have some follow-on elements. So a brand retargeting, brand response case might be something like, look at who's engaged with your advertising in the last campaign and really target those as your kind of thought leaders, as your cohort to look at it in the next campaign. Another case is probably what I would call app remarketing.
So this would be app developers users who are already down apps but are not using them, so as a means of getting the users to kind of use them again.
Yeah, I think that's one aspect of it. So if you look at a lot of the utility type applications, music apps, so on, you've got a registered user base. They'll have those device identifiers as a pool to upload into the platform, and then we can either break those down by different segments based on their behavior or recency of use, that sort of thing, and build particular campaigns against those folks. So if you've got a special offer that you really want to use to reawaken your base and say, actually, come back and you'll get next month's subscription free. That's a great way to pull out a segment here. And allowing the DSP tools that we have to go and find all those users out in the broad audience across all the mobile exchanges, the desktop exchanges of mobile traffic.
And is that a big chunk of money these guys are putting into this, or I mean, obviously getting the users to use the apps is important for the app developers themselves, because they may be selling advertising, or they may be selling games, or in-game sort of purchases, etc. So, are they piling lots of money into the remarketing piece of this?
I think a lot of them are. You've seen Twitter actually jump on this bandwagon quite a lot with their advertising, and you're really looking at a number of cases where app developers are splitting their budgets between discovery campaigns and remarketing campaigns, and sometimes up to maybe 50-50 with that.
Okay, cool. So who's next on the list then?
So I think what's going to be really interesting is some of the more traditional brand advertisers, the ones that, these guys today are the guys who the primary experience of the consumer is actually with the app, I'd say. To shift toward this end of the spectrum, I think we're thinking about, how do we actually enable cases like site retargeting on a mobile device? So not only people who've looked at a campaign, but maybe somebody who's come along and visited Sky's mobile website to look at some of the offers around subscription packages. We want to be able to collect those identifiers of those particular users, and then using the DSP technologies that we've got at our disposal, go and find those again out and follow on advertising against those people who are much more likely to convert because they visited in the first place.
And do you think are we close to that then, being able to do the site retargeting effectively?
Yeah, I think Bid's ahead of the game in terms of our thinking around that. That's something we're looking to launch before the holiday season. And that's something that we think has some real legs to it with these kind of advertisers.
Do you think these will be the big driver then around the sort of retargeting piece then? These particular brands looking to push users towards purchase, basically?
I think so. I think that we have some always on type campaigns already in the mobile space. They typically are less programmatic in some sense than they ought to be, or than they are in their desktop equivalents. And I think really this is about us providing a bring your own data platform to these advertisers so that they can be very savvy about segmenting and targeting the user base that they see either as visitors or as users of their
Yeah.
services, and that's where the real value lies, is
Yeah.
to not throw everyone in one big bucket and say, oh, that this is the CPM against those users, but say, here's somebody who's already shown intent, here's somebody who's already gone through the purchase funnel once. We want to get that happening again and refresh that.
So one last question about this, actually, and it's probably important, but obviously people have given out over the years about people outside our industry giving out about being smashed by retargeted ads like dresses and runners following around the internet. And obviously with a cookie on the desktop, you can actually do some decent frequency capping.
Mm-hmm.
How does that work on a mobile space? Like, so are we going to see stupid ads falling around and have the same kind of like creepy sort of stalking type thing, or will there be like frequency capping available on mobile? Which it's a fair question, because that's kind of creeped out quite a lot of users. And damaged brands as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's no one likes it when they feel like they're being stalked on advertising.
Full stop.
I mean, for us, this really all goes into what I was talking about before. It's our precision audience engine.
Yeah.
And precision is really the key for that. So that not only gives us the ability to kind of correlate multiple types of device identifiers, but it also means that we've got this unique user identity attached to that, and that's something that that we've implemented across the board, which then powers the frequency capping aspect of it. Right. So what you don't want is there's frequency cap of 10.
Yeah.
But it ends up being 10 in every single app that the
absolutely,
user,
and then
that's
the ad.
That's what's happening today. If somebody's applying kind of desktop retargeting technology to this, relying on a cookie.
Yeah.
So that's really the advantage here, is this correlates the same user, and then you go out and find that same user across all the exchanges.
Okay. So you're solving the frequency capping problem as well as helping retargeting.
Yeah. So universal frequency capping for mobile is. It's not an easy problem to solve.
No.
There's a lot of data flowing through this to continually kind of mapping those users together, making sure that we have the best identity correlation that we can do.
Yeah.
Are you going to get to 100% reliability and frequency capping? Probably not. People change devices, people change providers and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. But I think you can do it actually a lot more accurately than in desktop, because of the cookie renewal issues. Yeah. And you can do it across those app and web environments as well.
Okay, Wes, thanks for bringing us through the mobile retargeting 101. Nice to see it's growing, and interesting to see the use cases as well. So I have to get you in again and talk about this precision audience engine. Thanks again, Wes, and that was Trader Talk TV, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you.